And now it's my privilege to introduce Mr. Dan Nadeau, Senior Official of the Office of International Religious Freedom at the U.S. Department of State. Mr. Nadeau has served as Director of the Office of International Religious Freedom since August 2015, where he is responsible for promoting freedom of religion and belief for all as a core objective of U.S. foreign policy. You may not realize it, Dan, but you are personally connected to the topic of this webinar. A young woman representing the Cao religion attended the Asia-Pacific Religious Freedom Conference in Taipei in March 2016, and you were there. Inspired by what she saw and heard, upon return to Vietnam, she co-founded the Vietnam Fourth Roundtable, which has since served as a platform for multi-faith efforts, an ongoing effort to promote religious freedom in Vietnam. So you can claim some credit there as well. Then, following the example of USERF, the State Department's latest Earth report cited incidents where the 1997 sect harassed followers of the Cao religion, thus distinguishing these two entities. We are interested in learning how your office would build on the acknowledgement of this distinction to ensure that Cao believers would enjoy equal treatment by the government as the members of the 1997 sect. And if you can share anything about the most recent human rights dialogue between the US and Vietnam, that would be very, very much appreciated there.
Dr. Tung, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for the welcome. It's a pleasure to be with you today virtually, and I hope as we look towards 2022, we are perhaps going to be able to gather in person for C4 once more. Well, the State Department's Office of International Religious Freedom, which I currently have the honor of leading, promotes universal respect for freedom of religion or belief for all as a core objective of U.S. foreign policy. We monitor religiously motivated abuses, harassment, and discrimination worldwide, and recommend, develop, and implement policies and programs to address these concerns. The United States has long been a global champion in promoting and defending freedom of religion or belief for all. This work is a vital piece of the Biden-Harris administration's overall efforts to advance human rights around the world as a U.S. foreign policy priority. Working with our embassies and consulates globally, the IRF Office uses the full range of diplomatic tools, both positive and punitive, to encourage governments to respect their international obligations and commitments to religious freedom. This includes reforming or repealing outdated laws, ending abusive or discriminatory practices, releasing individuals who have been imprisoned on account of their beliefs, and achieving justice for victims and accountability for perpetrators of religious freedom abuses. The IRF Office also supports the State Department's broader efforts to demonstrate solidarity with those who are struggling to secure their rights and working to free individuals imprisoned for their advocacy or their beliefs. It's long been understood that all human rights are interrelated. Freedom of religion cannot exist without robust protection for the freedoms of expression, peaceful assembly, and association. And conversely, societies cannot be truly free or healthy if people are unable to organize their lives in accordance with their conscience or their most deeply held beliefs without government interference. This is just as true in Vietnam as it is everywhere in the world. Now, for some people, following their beliefs leads them to establish a new religious organization, to build a place of worship, to gather with others who share their beliefs. Some feel compelled, based on their beliefs, to support others in their communities by becoming healthcare providers or teachers. And for some, their beliefs lead them to social or political activism, trying to change systems or support the marginalized or disenfranchised. There is, in fact, a proud global tradition of people who have been inspired by their faiths to demand equality and justice for all. From Gandhi to William Wilberforce to Martin Luther King, these and other individuals sought to transform societies in pursuit of ideals they had encountered in their own explorations of faith. The involvement of religious leaders and community members in political life is a patriotic act and a crucial part of a thriving and prosperous society. Restricting the rights of faith actors to do so impacts their religious freedom as well as their civil and political rights. It's very clear that Vietnam has a thriving and dedicated community of religious freedom and human rights advocates who love their country and who want to see it succeed. Vietnam features prominently in our work on human rights, and I'm pleased to share some details with you on the State Department's efforts. In spite of the promise of reform in Vietnam's 2018 religion law, we continue to hear of incidents of local authorities targeting members of independent, unregistered groups by interrogating or arresting them for purportedly being anti-government or separatist. To be clear, the US has long taken the position that no religious community should be forced by a government to register in order to operate. Among our longtime concerns with regard to Vietnam is that the government forces religious groups to register under a state-sanctioned umbrella organization, thus limiting the ability of these communities to organize their own affairs as their beliefs dictate. Registration itself is contingent upon government approval of a community's religious tenets and organizational structure, which is clearly inconsistent with international human rights standards. Authorities continue to require members of religious groups to obtain approval or provide notification for routine religious activities, such as gathering for prayer. Even when groups attempt to meet these guidelines, we hear reports of officials frequently and arbitrarily denying or ignoring these requests in a manner that's inconsistent with Vietnam's own religion law. And to date, we are not aware of any government official being held responsible for failing to follow the terms of that law. The experience of the independent Cao Dai community clearly illustrates the nature and scope of the religious freedom challenges in Vietnam. In 1997, the government sought to co-opt the Cao Dai faith, taking over their temples and houses of worship. Since that time, followers of the independent Cao Dai community who have refused to join a government-sanctioned organization face abuse and harassment, including the seizure of houses of worship, forceful disruption of religious gatherings, the arrest and detention of members, and the imprisonment of those advocating for the rights of independent Cao Dai to freely practice their faith. Just this past September, Tin Yang province authorities arrested 3 independent Cao Dai leaders and questioned them for hours regarding their religious activities. This is, of course, unacceptable. We have also been concerned over attempts by government-supported groups to take over independent Cao Dai houses of worship, including efforts last year to evict congregants of the Hue Sung Cao Dai temple in Phu Yin province. Even the government-approved Cao Dai followers cannot freely practice their faith. The government will not give them permission to hold rituals to select their next leader. We continue to be deeply grateful that brave members of unregistered religious communities, including many in the independent Cao Dai community, put themselves at risk to report human rights violations to international monitoring bodies. The United States actively monitors and reports extensively on the status of religious freedom in Vietnam, as we do in all countries, in our annual International Religious Freedom Report. But as important as it is to gather and publish such information, it's even more important to ensure that the contents of our reports are used to address the underlying challenges we observe. Our reports form the basis for bilateral and multilateral diplomacy to promote religious freedom that continues throughout the year. As Dr. Tong mentioned, just a few weeks ago, I was pleased to take part in a human rights dialogue with the Vietnam government here in Washington, where I raised these and related concerns and encouraged authorities to take additional steps to improve the state of religious freedom in the country. Now, I think we must acknowledge that this work is most effective when done in tandem with other like-minded governments and in partnership with civil society, including religious communities themselves. Through the International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance and other multilateral platforms, we continue to broaden efforts to call for the release of prisoners and urge Vietnam to adhere to its international commitments in protecting freedom of religion or belief for all. The United States government will continue to speak out, to lift up the voices of those who strive for better, and to ensure that those unable to speak at present are never forgotten. Thank you again, Dr. Tong and colleagues, and I look forward to our forthcoming conversation.